She faked the illness for 6 months to hide. She moved to Ireland and got engaged, full story. I found her wedding website at midnight, her name, another man's name, May 17th circled in flowers and fancy fonts like it was the happiest news in the world. I stared at it for a long time, then I closed my laptop, turned off the light, and went to sleep. 2 weeks later, she knocked on my door, same eyes, same smile, same way of tilting her head when she's about to say something she thinks I want to hear. And I opened the door, pulled her into a hug, and said, God, I missed you. Every word of it true, every word of it insane. I've been on and off with this girl since college, roughly 8 years. She's now 28 and I'm going to be a 30-year-old man. Regardless of the status technicality of our relationship, we have always been inseparable and best friends with amazing sex and fun. We still crave each other after 8 years. Even though it's been so long, we still feel like teenagers when we are together. I know how that sounds. Believe me, I've rehearsed it in my head enough times that even I can hear how delusional it comes across. But before you scroll past this thinking you already know how this ends, I need you to sit with me for a minute because I genuinely don't know what the right answer is anymore. And the moment she showed back up at my front door 2 weeks ago, for the third time in 8 years, I realized that whatever grip reality had on me for those 5 months she was gone had completely let go. Her name is Claire, and I think she might actually be ruining my life. The worst part, I've let her every single time. We met freshman year of college at a bonfire party off campus. One of those parties where someone's older brother had a house and nobody knew whose friend was whose. I remember she was wearing a yellow flannel and laughing too loudly at something that clearly wasn't that funny, and I thought that someone who was comfortable with themselves. I introduced myself by spilling a beer on her shoes. She looked down, looked back up, and said, You owe me a new pair. We talked for 4 hours straight. That was the beginning, or the first beginning, I guess. We dated on and off through college, the kind of relationship that nobody in your friend group can fully keep track of because the status changes so often. Are they together? I don't know, ask him. One semester we were completely over and she was briefly seeing some guy named Tyler from her biology class, and I spent the entire 3 months pretending I didn't care while aggressively going to the gym and texting her too often anyway. Then Tyler transferred schools or something and we were back together before the semester ended. What I'm saying is, the pattern established itself early, and I was too young and too into her to recognize it for what it was. By senior year, we were as solid as we'd ever been. We had a shared group of friends, a routine, something that felt like a real adult relationship in the making. After graduation, we both stayed in the same city. She got a marketing job. I was doing project management work for a mid-sized construction company. We weren't living together, but we might as well have been. That was probably the longest stretch of actual stability we ever had. And then she got into a graduate program in Dublin. Full scholarship, prestigious school, the whole thing. She was over the moon. And I genuinely, honestly was proud of her. There wasn't a single part of me that wanted to take that from her. What I did want was to go with her. Looking back now, I can see how much pressure that put on everything. I quit my job. I had money saved, not a ton, but enough that I thought I could figure it out, get a visa, find remote work, maybe pick up something local. The plan, insofar as there was one, was loose. Claire was cautiously enthusiastic. She wanted me there, but she also knew better than I did how uncertain it all was. 5 months in, reality caught up with me hard. The visa situation was a nightmare. The money was almost gone, and I had a medical issue, nothing life-threatening, but something that needed to be properly diagnosed and treated, and I couldn't access the care I needed without legal residency status. I had no real choice. I came home. The breakup happened about 8 weeks after I got back to the States. It wasn't a screaming match. It was quieter and sadder than that, the kind of breakup where you both know you're not angry at each other, you're just angry at circumstances. I told her I thought we were in different places, that once she finished her degree and came home, we'd find our way back. I believed that, I really did. I moved to Boston. She stayed in Dublin. And for a while, the distance was actually manageable in the strangest way because even though we were broken up, we weren't not talking. She'd visit, I'd see her. We'd fall back into each other like no time had passed and no distance existed. But then graduation loomed and she told me she'd been offered a job in Ireland. A real one, a good one, and I could feel the ground shifting under me. I did everything I could think of. I made the case for Boston, for us. I told her what I felt in terms I hadn't used before. I thought if she just understood how serious I was, she'd choose us. She didn't. She said she was going back. I told her it was over for real this time. Deleted her number, unfollowed everything. Did the whole scorched earth thing that feels necessary and dramatic when you're heartbroken and trying to convince yourself it's actually over. It wasn't over. 5 months later, I'm sitting in my apartment on a Sunday afternoon when my phone starts blowing up from my neighbor asking if I know a girl crying on my front steps. I walked outside and there she was, Claire, in a coat I'd never seen before, looking smaller than I remembered, with mascara tracking down her face in thin lines. I almost closed the door. I want to be honest about that. There was a second, just a second, where I thought about closing the door and calling it self-preservation. I didn't. We talked for hours. She said she'd made a mistake, that she was back for good, that she'd realized what she'd given up. I didn't say anything for a long time after she finished. I just sat there thinking about how many times I'd imagined this conversation and how hearing it out loud didn't feel the way I'd expected. I told her, and I meant it, that I was willing to try again under one condition. She had to actually commit to Boston, move close, get a job here. I wasn't doing the long-distance thing anymore, and I wasn't waiting around on hope. If she wanted this, she had to be all in. She moved into an apartment 3 blocks from me within a month. What I found out later, not immediately, but within the first few weeks of us being back together, was that she hadn't just been living in Ireland finishing her degree and working. She had been engaged. A guy named James, Irish family from what I gathered, well off, well connected. She broke it off, she told me, because when she imagined her future, it wasn't with him, it was with me. I remember how that made me feel. Some people would hear she was engaged to someone else and feel like they'd lost something. I felt the opposite. I felt chosen, which in retrospect was exactly the wrong reaction to have. We were together for 2 years after that, and I want to be honest here too, they were genuinely some of the best years of my life. We traveled, we laughed more than I thought two people could laugh. I surprised her with a trip to Portugal for her birthday that she cried about. We talked about the future in a way that felt real and concrete for the first time, not hypothetical, not deferred, but actual. We started talking about moving in together. We found a place we loved, but the rent was steep. Decided to wait a few months, save up, and lock it in properly. She was sleeping at my place 4 or 5 nights a week anyway. It didn't feel urgent. Then last August, I drove up to Maine to see my family for a stretch, cousins, my parents, the usual summer visit. Claire was supposed to join me for a few days in the middle of the trip. She texted me the day before she was supposed to arrive and said she couldn't make it. Her mom had gotten sick suddenly without much detail and she had to fly down to South Carolina to be with her. I said, of course, take care of your mom, don't worry about it. And I meant it, family stuff happens, you don't question it. But the communication started slipping after that, not dramatically, not in a way that screamed red flag immediately, just a subtle drift, texts going longer without responses, short answers, a couple of calls that went to voicemail. I told myself she was stressed, her mom was sick. What kind of person gets anxious about short texts when someone's mother is in the hospital? Then a few weeks later, she told me she'd gotten chickenpox. I know, I didn't question it at the time because it is actually possible for adults to get chickenpox if they never had it as a kid, and Claire had mentioned before that she'd never had it. She said it was bad, really bad, the kind that knocks adults down hard, and that between her mom's health and her own recovery, she just couldn't get back to Boston for a while. She could work remotely, so it wasn't a job issue. I sent her a care package to her parents' address in South Carolina. She thanked me and sent a voice note that sounded tired and a little raspy. I didn't see her for almost 2 months. She came back on Halloween weekend. I cannot overstate how happy I was. The relief of actually seeing her in person, of being able to hold her and not have to process everything through a phone screen. I had missed her in a way that kind of embarrassed me. We went out, dressed up, ran into friends, stayed up too late. It felt like the drought was over. And then she was gone again. The communication that I thought would snap back to normal after she returned didn't. She was still short with me, still slow to respond. I told myself she was readjusting, resettling into Boston after 2 months away. I gave it a week, then another. One morning I got up early, drove over to her apartment 3 blocks away and knocked on the door. A woman I'd never seen before answered. New tenant had been there since September. I stood on that doorstep for a moment longer than I should have, just processing. September. She'd moved out in September, a month into the trip to South Carolina that was supposed to be temporary, and she hadn't told me. When I finally reached her by phone, she had an explanation ready. She'd had to move back home, her dad was sick now too, she said, and with her student loans kicking in and rent in Boston being what it was, it made sense financially to go back to her parents' place and help out. She was embarrassed. She didn't know how to tell me. She was worried I'd overreact. I didn't overreact. I was frustrated, genuinely, deeply frustrated, but I tried to be understanding. I told her I wasn't angry, just that I needed honesty. That communication was the baseline. We agreed to work on it. But something had shifted in me, just a small, quiet thing, a splinter. Every time I suggested visiting her at her parents' place, there was a reason I couldn't. She was overwhelmed with her dad's care. The house was a mess. She needed space, always something reasonable, always something that individually made sense. I started thinking about it more than I probably should have, and eventually I started looking. She had told me months earlier that she'd deleted her Instagram and Facebook. Social media wasn't good for her mental health, she said. I hadn't thought twice about it, but I mentioned it offhandedly to a friend of mine, how Claire had gone off all platforms, and he looked at me with the exact expression I hadn't wanted to see. The buddy come on expression. I reached out to 2 people I was fairly certain Claire didn't know. Friends of friends, tangential connections, the kind of people whose names wouldn't ring a bell for her. I asked them to search for her on Instagram. She had both accounts active. The Instagram was set to private, but her profile photo was visible. It had changed. She looked happy in it, the kind of genuinely happy that you can't manufacture for a photo, standing somewhere outdoors, green landscape. I recognized it without wanting to. Ireland. I found the rest through a combination of things I'm slightly ashamed to admit involved more digging than I'd like to confess to. But the headline is this: Claire had never gone to South Carolina in August. She had flown back to Dublin. She had been living there with James, the fiancé she swore she'd left behind since the summer, and they had a wedding website, professional photos, a date registry, the works. The wedding was scheduled for May. I sat with that information for longer than I should have. I didn't call her, I didn't text her, I just sat with it. And somewhere in the sitting with it, I made a decision that I still don't fully understand. I wasn't going to confront her immediately. I was going to wait. I don't know why exactly. Maybe I needed to see if she'd tell me on her own. Maybe I needed to look her in the eye when it happened. Maybe I just wasn't ready to be done yet even then. That last one is the hardest to admit. A couple of weeks ago, she showed up at my door again. 3rd time in 8 years. Same doorstep, different coat, same Claire. She had been in Boston, she said, for a few days. She wanted to see me, she'd missed me. I let her in. We had a good time, we always have a good time. That's the thing about Claire and me that no one who hasn't experienced it would understand. The chemistry doesn't care about context. It doesn't care about lies or timelines or wedding websites. When she's in the room, and everything else gets quieter. I hate that about us. I've never stopped hating it. The last night she was there, we were sitting on the couch. It was late. She was talking about wanting to get back to Boston properly this time, talking about the future in that way she does that makes it sound both certain and just out of reach, and I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't sit there and play dumb. I pulled up the wedding website on my phone and put it on the coffee table facing her. The silence was immediate and total. When were you going to tell me? I asked. I kept my voice level. I'm actually proud of that looking back. She stared at the screen for a long moment, and then she started crying, not the polished kind, not the strategic kind, but the ugly, chest-heaving kind that doesn't give you time to get your story straight first. And she told me everything. Ireland since August, James, his family. The wedding that she swore was now off because the 2 of them had turned toxic, that she was in love with me, that coming back here to see me was proof that she couldn't go through with it. She said his family had money, that she'd grown up with nothing, that her own family had pushed her toward him, that she'd told herself it was practical and that practicality was enough. But I keep ending up back here, she said. Because that's what you do, I said. You end up here when the other thing falls apart. That landed, I could see it land. She tried to push back at one point, told me I wasn't being fair, that I was acting like I'd never made a mistake, like I hadn't left her in Ireland the first time, like our entire history was her fault. And she wasn't entirely wrong about that. I did leave. I did cut contact at points. I've made my own choices in this thing that I'm not proud of. She said I was making her out to be the villain in a story we'd both written. Maybe that's true. I don't know. What I do know is that there's a difference between making mistakes and looking someone in the eye and lying to them for 6 months while building a life with someone else 2 time zones away. She left the next morning. She said she needed time to sort out the Ireland situation properly, that she'd be in touch, that this wasn't goodbye. I watched her go. And now I'm sitting here writing this out because I genuinely don't know what to do with any of it. Part of me, and I hate this part, I want to be clear, part of me is still considering it, still running the math on whether this is the kind of story that eventually makes sense, where the chaos was just the price of getting to something real. 8 years is a long time to be in something. You don't throw away 8 years of genuine connection without at least pausing. But then another part of me knows. The part that stood in front of a stranger who'd been living in Claire's apartment since September. The part that pulled up a wedding website on my phone at midnight like I was presenting evidence at a trial. The part that realizes I have spent almost a decade circling the same fire and calling it a relationship. She told me once years ago that she thought soulmates weren't meant to be easy, that the difficulty was the proof. I thought that was beautiful at the time. I'm less sure now whether it was wisdom or just a convenient thing to tell yourself. She's back in Ireland right now, presumably. I don't know what she's told James. I don't know if the wedding is actually off or if that was another story for another doorstep. I don't know if next month she'll be standing in front of me again with a new explanation that almost fits together, and I don't know, and this is the part that genuinely scares me, whether I'd let her in again. My best friend sat me down yesterday and told me quietly and without any drama that I needed to block her number and get into therapy. He wasn't mean about it. He just said it the way you say something when you've watched someone do the same thing for 8 years and you're out of other ways to say it. He said I deserved someone who chose me without a backup plan. He said I kept confusing intensity for connection. I've been thinking about that ever since. She made me feel things I've never felt with anyone else. That's real. I'm not going to pretend it isn't. But the question I keep landing on, the one I can't argue my way out of, is whether what we have is actually love or whether it's just the longest, most elaborate loop I've ever been stuck in. Whether she comes back to me because I'm the one or because I'm the one who always answers. I'm 30 years old. I left a job for her once. I've deleted her and undeleted her more times than I can count. I found her wedding website the way a detective finds evidence in a cold case, and I still, God help me, I still felt something sitting next to her on that couch that I've never felt sitting next to anyone else. So here I am, asking the internet what to do with that. Was I wrong to play along for those last few days before I confronted her? Should I have called her out the moment I found the wedding website instead of letting her come to me? Was I just stringing it out because I wanted to see her one more time before it ended? And if so, what does that say about me? She betrayed me, that's clear. 6 months of lies, a fake illness, a fake sick family, a real fiancé, a real apartment in Dublin, and a real wedding that was 3 months away. That's not a mistake. That's a constructed alternate life. But I'm also not innocent here, am I? I'm the one who let her in every time. I'm the one who played dumb for 4 days because I wasn't ready for it to be over. I'm the one sitting here at 30 years old still asking strangers whether my soulmate is actually my soulmate or whether she's just the most familiar kind of hurt I know. So tell me honestly, am I the asshole for still not being sure whether to let her back in, or am I finally, for the first time in 8 years, about to make the right call? 8-year on and off relationship, she lied about being sick for 6 months while secretly living in Ireland with her fiancé whose family has money, showed up at my door again claiming the wedding is off and she loves me, and I am somehow still not certain what I'm going to do. Am I the asshole for considering giving this another shot?